Hello, my friends, and welcome to our YouTube channel. My name is Kwami Christian, and today we are going to break down the White Lotus season finale. So if you have not watched it yet, spoilers are coming, all right? So you have been warned. My wife and I loved this season, and then it highlighted a negotiation at the end of the episode. It was fantastic, and so I had to break this one down. But for those of you who don't watch White Lotus, let me give you a quick rundown so you understand the backstory going into this. So let's see how quickly we can get this in. And again, spoilers are coming. Okay, so Belinda met Tanya in season 1 and boom, life changed. Tanya was rich, emotionally unstable, but full of potential. She promised to support Belinda's wellness business until she got distracted by Gary. So Tanya falls for him, ditches the business deal, and they get married. Now, Tanya was worth $500 million, but in season 2, we found out that Gary was never really in love with her. He was in love with his actual soulmate, Quentin.
Yeah, she's clueless, as usual.
And that's when Gary and Quentin conspire alongside half of the gay community of Italy to delete Tanya in order to get all of her money. And in their plan, they want to get her onto a yacht and so they could take care of her there. But Tanya caught on to them and she tried to run.
Do you know these gays? Do you know these gays?
But Tanya can still slay, literally. But unfortunately, after all of that slaying, she ends up deleting herself as she overestimates her athleticism as she tries to escape the yacht. And now, Gary is a billionaire widower. Enter season 3. Belinda is back. But this time, she is not alone. She's got her Obama-adjacent son, Zion, with her. And together, they're negotiating with Gary because Gary wants to pay them off so he can avoid jail time. And this is where we start the negotiation. Roll the tape.
This place is killer, man. You're balling.
Thank you. I thought we'd be talking privately.
Okay, so let's actually stop right here. Something subtle but important is happening. I call this a meta negotiation. So this is a negotiation within the negotiation. And essentially what's happening here is we are negotiating for the frame of this conversation. What's the storyline? And then also what's the vibe? Zion wants a really friendly, respectful interaction, and Gary is not interested in that at all. Gary is just straight business, and he is not even interested in Zion because he doesn't know who this is. And so he gives a minimal acknowledgement to Zion and then immediately focuses his attention on Belinda and says, I thought we were meeting alone. And essentially what he's saying is, who is this guy? And why is he talking to me? I don't have time for this. And so there's this undercurrent of animosity and frustration already coming from Gary. I'm not even sure if Zion has picked up on it yet, but it kind of sets the tone for the entirety of the negotiation. They are just simply not at all on the same wavelength. And another thing, Gary is seeing through what Zion is trying to do. Zion is trying to establish rapport, be really friendly in order to be more persuasive. And again, Gary is just making it clear he doesn't want any of that. He just wants to talk to the person who is the decision maker, which is Belinda, and get straight down to business.
We're a team. It's just how it's always been. But don't trip. Cone of silence.
Okay. Now, this is an important point as it relates to culture. When we are having these interactions, these negotiations, we want to make sure that we are addressing people and talking to people in a way that they can understand and appreciate. Earlier on in the interaction, Zion described this place as a baller place. Hey, Gary, your mansion is pretty baller. And now he says, hey, don't trip. Now, this is going to sound like a needless exercise, but it's very important. If you look up in the dictionary what the definition of trip is, we have the verb to catch one's foot on something and stumble or fall, or the noun, the act of going to a place and returning, a journey or excursion, especially for pleasure, right? That's what the word trip means. And then let's go to Urban Dictionary. What does Urban Dictionary say trip means? According to Urban Dictionary, trip is the state of acting whack, to overreact, or to lose yo cool. Yo homie, don't trip is an example of that. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Here's the question. Does anything about Gary scream urban to you? I didn't pick up on any urban vibes from Gary. There's a big generational difference and there's a big cultural difference. And Zion is using his cultural colloquialisms, the terms, the jargon, the slang that would resonate with somebody who is within his tribe. And that could be used to create warmth and fondness and connection because we're saying, hey, we are similar to each other. And that makes us like each other more. In psychology, this is called affinity bias. You are like me, so I like you. That's what it is. But that's the strategic usage, when you think about it through a lens of cultural intelligence, of using slang, but it can be isolating and create division between people if you use slang that the other person does not accept, understand, or respect. And right now, instead of creating rapport with Gary, which is what he wants to do, he is broadening the discrepancy between the two. He's just reinforcing just how different we are. We're different culturally, we're different generationally, and now it's making it harder for him to feel connected. But again, Zion is trying to build trust and establish rapport, but essentially everything that he's doing is working against it.
Business major at U of H. Don't care about what you did, what you're gonna do. All I care about is business and the bottom line. MBA, baby. Hey.
Okay, so much to analyze here. So now what is he going to do? What is Zion doing? Really? What he's saying is he's recognizing, hey, there's a difference in age. I'm the youngest person here. There's a difference in class. There's a difference in financial strength and power. And there's a difference in status. Now he's starting to feel it. And you can see him almost starting to get desperate for recognition, validation, and acknowledgement. And so he's saying, well, you might not know, but I am actually a person of high status. I have an MBA, and that's pretty impressive. Yes, Zion, it's impressive for you and people at your level. But Gary is already a billionaire. So you get your MBA to one day hopefully make a lot of money. He is already there. It's not going to impress him. And so in these situations, the more you try to drum up your accomplishments in order to try to meet the status of other people, you're actually giving away your power because you're over explaining what your value is. The value that you have should be conveyed. It's not something that you convince other people of, right? The way that you carry yourself. And what you're seeing is that he is trying way too hard to connect. He's trying way too hard to establish himself and demonstrate that he has value in this conversation. And in trying to amplify his status and connect with Gary, he's actually doing the opposite. He's making himself seem lower status. And then look at his mom's face. Can we run that back? Look at his mom's face. She sees it all. She hasn't said a word. Gary has said maybe like 6 words, and Zion is talking, and making everything worse. And so you're seeing that that disappointed mom look where everything is said without being said, right? And Zion picked up on that. Tell me what you think her face was saying. What do you think Belinda's face was saying right here to Zion? Because Zion picked it up and he straightened up. He wiped that smile off of He wiped that smile off of his face so fast. He's like, get serious. You look like a clown right now. Get serious. And so thankfully, Zion picked up on that not so subtle facial expression and he has made that adjustment. But let's see if it works. So for this next section, you don't need to listen to what is being said. I just want you to look at who is doing all of the talking. Who's doing all the talking? Is Belinda talking? Is Gary talking? He's barely spoken, right? It's all Zion. That's a problem. If you're the person doing all the talking in a negotiation, there is something profoundly wrong. Negotiation is an information game. The more information I have, the better I'm going to be. I'm not learning if I'm doing all the talking. You need to be asking more questions. So when I negotiate, I try to use the 70-30 rule, where I am letting the other side talk 70% of the time. I'm only talking 30% of the time. That shows me that I'm gathering information and I'm also controlling the conversation with the questions that I'm asking. Zion hasn't asked any questions. It's been 2 minutes, and all he's been doing is trying to prove that he is cool, prove that we are the same, and also prove that he is smart and has the status to be in Gary's presence. And he has failed on all accounts. So if you find yourself over explaining, a lot of times that's almost like a defense mechanism where it's a nervous response, not a strategic thought, right? So if you have something to say, you have to make sure that every move has impact. It's just like chess. Every move must have a purpose. I'm not saying anything in negotiation unless it serves a specific purpose, specific strategic purpose or psychological purpose, right? And Zion is just out here spinning his wheels, talking. Speak less, listen more. And if you are ever in a situation, in a tough conversation, and you don't know what to say next, the next thing you should say should come in the form of a question.
Coming true like full on. I mean, you got your dream here. She's got to get hers, right? I mean, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Hers has been deferred a long time. Might explode.
Look at her face. Can we zoom in on her face again? She is disgusted. She, she's looking like, what are you doing? We paid all this money for an MBA, and this is what it has led to. This is your negotiation. This is bad. So what is happening in the sales world? They call this the show up and throw up strategy, where you just show up in front of the prospect and just blah, just word vomit every thought that possibly comes to mind. Again, it's a result of nerves and fear and a lack of confidence a lot of times when you're just over talking. So another thing he's trying to do here, let's go back to cultural intelligence, is he's trying to create connection through the use of poetry. All right, so for those of you who don't know, he was just quoting a famous black poet named Langston Hughes. It's a poem called Harlem, or better known as A Dream Deferred. So they ask, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it just dry up like a raisin in the sun? And it goes on. It's a very, very profound piece, but it is very, very respected and appreciated within the Black American community. I don't know Gary's background, but he doesn't seem to be the kind of person who walks around quoting Langston Hughes, right? And here's the most important point. When you're making these types of strong cultural references, quoting poetry or quoting song lyrics, you need to make sure that you are targeting that message to a person who understands it. You have to know your audience. You're trying to create a connection, but you're creating more division by using slang and making cultural references that the other person cannot appreciate. Because if you're quoting poetry to somebody who knows the poetry, you sound incredibly profound. They're well read, they're sophisticated, they are educated, they are a Renaissance man, right? It's impressive. But if you quote poetry and the person does not know you're quoting poetry, you just sound weird. You just sound weird. Why are we talking about raisins? I don't know what you're saying, right? And so we're creating more division. Gary looks confused and annoyed, and Belinda is now, not just is she scared, but now she's embarrassed and disgusted and confused as to what is happening and why things are going so poorly so quickly. So if you are going to make cultural references, that's fine. Just make sure that you are using the references that a person can actually understand and appreciate.
So, how much would it take for her to get her happy ending?
Well, we crunched the numbers, Greg, and if we're being realistic, all in, soup to nuts, 5 million.
He almost killed her. He almost killed her. Well, let me say this. Kudos to him for saying this with authority. He said that confidently. There was a small hesitation. If we can go back, there was a small hesitation before he delivered it. That wasn't great. But when he actually said it, he said it with 10 toes down with confidence. The problem was he did not prepare his client. For me as a lawyer, that was one thing that we learn early and often. You either learn it from a mentor or you learn it the hard way. You need to make sure your client is prepared. It is never a good look when you and your client are very clearly not on the same page. And so even though he may have delivered that offer and said it confidently, it was immediately undermined by the fact his mom almost died of shock as he said the number. She was not at all prepared, right? And now there could be some strategy here because Zion might know that the initial offer was $100,000. What he asked for was substantially more. And he might know that his mom wouldn't have okayed that. So he went rogue and did it himself to be very aggressive and put a good foot forward. But you can see the response. The response undermined the validity of the ask. So let's see how this plays out.
That's not happening.
Look, I know that's a big ask, but I did do a little research, and according to the internet, your wife, late wife, ex-wife, former wife, rest in peace, was worth at least $500 million.
And now, for the first time, we're finally seeing that MBA payoff. He did his research. He made an aggressive request, but he was immediately able to justify that with objective and legitimate criteria. So he's saying, hey, listen, I did not pull this out of nowhere. I did my research. This is what I found. And if she passed, you have that money now. Now look at what Gary tries to do next. This was a really sneaky move.
Don't believe everything you read.
Oh, I know. I found
And there, with Gary's response, this is something that affluent people love to do. When they are showing off to their friends, when they're flaunting their status, when they're getting access to high-level places, they love to brag about how much money they have and how successful they are. They're not ashamed of that. But the moment it comes to paying somebody something, rich people love to pretend that they're poor. Oh, don't believe everything you see on the internet. Okay, Gary. Now you're broke. We're in your big old mansion and now you're broke. Okay, nice. Okay, so just pay attention to that. Whenever it's time to pay up, everybody has some financial constraint that they didn't have when they were spending lavishly moments before. So now let's see how Zion handles this deflection.
Everything you read.
Oh, I know. I found some very public records where that number pretty much checks out. So what we're asking for is a mere 1% of your total haul. We get that, and we are ride or die till the day we die. We are Team Gary. I mean, peace of mind.
There we go. Now, look at Mr. MBA. He is crushing it now. So he righted the ship. This is an important thing. Listen, in your tough conversations, there's no such thing as a perfect conversation. No such thing. But it's important to recognize when you're off track and get back on track. Thankfully for Zion, he had the guidance of a judgmental mother with strong facial expressions, right? So he was able to right the ship. That gave him the self-awareness he needed. We need to also have the same level of self-awareness when we're in our tough conversations. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I still make mistakes in my tough conversations, but you need to be able to adapt and adjust and get back on track. And that's what Zion did. So he not only came with the research, he was ready for the objection and went with further research. It was brilliant that he didn't just drip it all out and say everything all at once. He said what he needed to say, he waited for a response, and then gave even more information. So he said, hey, actually, I checked public records. So this isn't some gossip magazine, it's the public records, and that substantiated what I found. And also, when you think about your overall net worth, what we're asking for is less than 1%. And so even though $5 million seems like a lot of money, because it is, so what he does really well here is that he uses the contrast principle. So instead of comparing where we are from where we started, which was $100,000, which was the initial offer, up to $5 million, we're saying, hey, listen, you got about $500 million. And all we're asking for is 500,000, which is just 1%. So now what seemed like an initially aggressive offer seems in contrast a lot more reasonable, especially considering what it is that Gary's trying to accomplish. Another thing that Zion did really, really well here is he utilized a very subtle threat without it seeming too threatening. So he's like, hey, we are Team Gary. We're going to be on your team. And isn't that worth the cost of peace of mind? And what is he saying there? Because if you don't pay us, then you're not going to be able to rest easy. But if you pay us, we're in it with you. We're connected to you, right? But if you don't pay us, now we're a wild card. You don't know what's going to happen. And considering the potential liability that he's looking at, that's a pretty compelling offer. So Zion is doing really well, but wait until you see what happens next.
Right?
I'm not doing this. He's not giving us any money, and this is a waste of time, okay? Now let's go. Zion!
Okay, Mom, why don't you just give us businessmen a minute alone?
No, I mean it.
And just like that, it is done. She could not handle the pressure and the negotiation is over. It was just when Zion was starting to do better. I was like, oh no, we're so close. And here's the thing, when you look at both of their body languages, if you look at Zion as she's getting up, his hands spread out like this, and he's looking up at her, and you could see his lips start to form like an O, like this. Right? What's he saying? He's mouthing to himself like, what or why, right? There's a question about to come out that he can't articulate. So it's true confusion. He's about to ask a question for clarity subconsciously, and you can see it in his lips. He's like, what? And then if you look at Gary, this was the most expressive Gary was throughout the whole negotiation. He does the exact same thing with his hands, right? And he's looking up, wondering what's happening. That's the body language that we're seeing here. Is those are genuine responses of curiosity or confusion. The palms go upward and they start to extend out. So when you start to see that, somebody has some questions. So think about in a conversation you have with somebody. Sometimes you might see them, you might be talking, and then you maybe see their hands briefly go do something like this. They're listening to you, but then they bring the hands back. That's a signal to you that there was some confusion and they wanted to ask a question, but for some reason they held back. So for me in that situation, what I do is I hold off, I stop what I'm saying, I'll say, and I just want to give you an opportunity to share anything that's on your mind right now. I saw a thought. I saw a thought and you held it back. I want to know what that is, right? So that's an example of how you could use that body language and actually read it in the moment. But I think there is a twist coming. So let's hold off and see what happens next. And before we move on to that next screen, if you are still at this point, that tells me you like this video. So come on, just give me a like, please. I'm having fun. If you're at this far in this video, then you are too. So just give us a like. That helps us to reach more people. Now let's get back to it.
Hey, what are you doing? I was just making my big pitch.
You go back in there and you tell him your mother takes things very personal. She doesn't trust him, okay? And if we don't make a deal and we don't get the money, who knows what I'll do.
Oh my goodness. Would you look at that? It was all a trick. Natasha Rothwell is a great actress, and she is also playing a character who's also a great actress. She had everybody fooled. It was genuine confusion. You saw it on Zion's face. You saw it on Gary's face. Everybody was fooled. And now I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because it is not clear whether or not she planned on doing this the whole time, or this was kind of a Hail Mary that she came up with in the moment. Let me know what you think in the comments. But here is my hypothesis. I think that this was her plan if the conversation was going well. And here's why I think this was a plan. Because number one, it worked exceptionally well. But also, I don't think she had enough faith in Zion's negotiation skills to trust him to pull this off. So she felt like she genuinely needed to not only trick Gary, but also trick Zion so he would be able to act truly confused. And as you can see, he was truly confused. And so this to me was a bit of a riff off of the old school technique of good cop, bad cop, where you have a cop in an interrogation situation where they're really mean, like, tell me where it is, surrender, admit that you're wrong. And then they leave. And then the good cop comes in and says, oh, I'm sorry about my partner. He's such a hothead. You want some coffee? Tell me about what happened. And then you spill the beans, right? That's the whole old school good cop, bad cop. I think this was bad cop, scared cop. And she was played the role of scared cop. And I don't know if it worked. But what she's doing is she's playing this role of saying, hey, listen, you don't know what's coming. It's the crazy like a fox technique, because sometimes the thing that is scariest is not the threat that you're aware of. You know exactly what's coming. It's the threat where you don't know exactly what's going to happen. What's going to happen? When is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? That's the kind of stuff that tortures you and keeps you up at night, right? And so what they're going to do is create that fear in Gary to say, listen, if you want to get a deal, you got to get a deal right now. She's about to leave. She's about to go home. And once she's gone, who knows what she's going to do or say, and then what happens to you. So now you have some pressure. You need to make a decision now. So what she's done is she's shifted the power dynamics. Before you could feel it. It seemed like Zion was begging for validation and begging for the deal. But now what she said is, listen, we have the power. You need safety, you need control, and we have that in our hands. And we're going to walk. Not only are we going to walk, we're going to fly out of Thailand back to the US where you can't touch me. And then you have no power, no chance to solve this problem. And so, do you think it worked? Well, let's see.
Holy
I called the bank.
And there we have it. A successful negotiation. What do you think about their approach? What did I miss? Because I'm sure I missed something. Let's keep this conversation going. I had a lot of fun with this one. I hope you did too. Also, if you're enjoying the content, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. It takes you 3 seconds to just give us a like. So please give us a like so we can continue to grow this channel and produce more reaction videos like this. If you have suggestions for things that you want us to react to, let us know. We're always looking for content ideas, and we're just excited to share more of this to help people have more fun, entertain yourself, and then maybe learn something along the way. Thank you again. My name is Kwami Christian. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one.